Thank you very much. Thank you, Minister Smith, for coming in to speak with us today on the annual transition statements. Minister, it is crucial, obviously, climate action and how our society is going to have to change to adapt to change behaviours. We know that it will be a change for every single person in this country. We'll have to change how they live, how they work, how they travel, their homes. But I suppose, Minister, I very much appreciate the update and a very detailed update that you've given us here. I suppose just a couple of points, and then I might just go through a few of the points that you mentioned in your opening statement. But my concern lies with the most vulnerable, and it always has. And the support here for the measures that are going to have to be delivered will need to ensure that those that are most vulnerable can be covered and supported as well, because we live in an equal society. An equal society does not mean that some people who are perhaps in more, in more secure employment with better access to public transport, that somehow they are immune to a certain extent to the challenges that are faced by people who do live in rural areas. This is a real concern for me. Just on agriculture, and I know our colleague here, Senator O'Reilly, spoke about famines in the world and what potentially will be happening in a number of months' time. This comes down to food security and how important it is that agriculture in many, many ways is providing food security. Minister, it has been acknowledged, and I myself, I went on a Teagasc walk in Ballydangan, outside of where I live in Ballinasloe, where they were showing farmers about red clover, the planting of red clover, how that's going to bring nitrogen back into the soil, how they're looking at ways, and farmers are taking the lead here. I suppose the key message is that farmers are looking to change practices that will bring a benefit to them, bring a benefit in terms of the quality of beef and the way they're able to sell their beef into new markets, which is crucial. But also that we understand that Ireland is a world-class producer of food, world-class in terms of agriculture. You'd be hard put to find another country that will compete with Ireland in terms of the level of dedication, commitment and young people that are involved. It is a family-run businesses in many, many cases, but also it's a generational, I don't know how to put it, a vocation. Coming from a farming background, it is a vocation to the land. But Minister, this is unique. And Ireland, in terms of what it can achieve in terms of food security, in supporting countries now, needs to be recognised as well. I suppose the challenge that we have is the supports that we need to put in place for farmers now with the higher costs, particularly around the fodder scheme, and I know the new acres scheme as well that was mentioned. The innovation that you mentioned here with the R&D and the disruptive technologies, DTIF, of course, through Enterprise Ireland, and all of this through Teagasc is going to be crucial. You know, the low-emission slurry spreading, the different types of equipment that agriculture and farmers can use, but that the costs of equipment are being brought down. How are we looking at reducing the cost of equipment, particularly for newer farmers, young farmers, to be able to put these measures into place? Minister, the second point for me is the rise that you mentioned as residential. So you said 6% went up, that was residential. Well, yes, of course, people working from home over the last 2 years, I'm sure have had a major impact. But again, the just transition, Minister. The area, of course, where I come from, you'd be very aware of it, Ballinasloe, East Galway and Roscommon. Minister, the SEAI, Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland, that agency comes under your department, and I know that they were previously at a committee there recently. They stated that their budget allocation is now more than 440 million, and of that 267 million is allocated specifically to energy retrofits in homes and communities. Minister, I'm asking you here to comment, why is it that the response is still 24 months for people who are looking for the warmer home scheme? So people who are on the warmer home scheme who are getting the fuel allowance, and we've already seen how the government has supported in terms of giving additional fuel allowance, giving the additional support to all families in Ireland and households. But Minister, when is this number going to reduce? When can we give a better timeline to families that are struggling, really struggling? Also, the question for me here is, can you comment on the contracts for providers now through the one-stop shop with SEAI? What is the timeline there for people who are looking for the one-stop shop? Are they going to be different to people on the warmer home scheme? And if that's the case, then we have a serious issue here. There is a small pool of people that are able to provide the retrofits. There's a small pool of people that are able to do this. And I know you're fully aware. We all are. I'm on the Education Committee, and obviously we're fighting for raising apprenticeships. You know, we have 4 retrofitting centres of excellence across the country. We are ramping up very, very fast. And I know it's in the last year or 2 years. But Minister, we have to be able to have targets here to say that that 24 months is coming down. And in no shape or form are we going to be able to challenge those homes, those people in particular, if we can't deliver for those warmer homes. I mean, we're talking, and apologies, I don't have the exact numbers, but you know, you are talking probably in 60,000 or roughly, I believe, people who might be on fuel allowance. The one other thing I would say just about homes is to do with public buildings. Like we talk about the retrofitting, and whatever we have, maybe 1.5, apologies, I don't know the exact precise figures, but majority obviously residential. But we also have tens of thousands of public buildings. What's been done there? Are they been retrofitted? Are they going to be brought up to spec? Prior to us then going out and saying, here, look at what's going to be happening on the residential side as well. And the one-stop shop, we're supporting that across a lot of our areas. So, we're doing an awful lot of public information meetings in our rural areas about promoting that scheme. Very, very important. But I would like perhaps a comment on just how we're managing with our public buildings as well. Just on transport, another issue, of course, coming from a rural area. And, I know we were on the West Track meeting this morning, and of course, wonderful to see how potentially we could get rail in the west of Ireland and the northwest. But the real challenge for me is how are we actually just going to get buses to be able to bring people to hospital and back again when over, say, a huge percentage of people don't have access to cars. And there is no other form of public transport in a lot of rural areas. There is no train station or train stop in small areas. Like in my constituency, as you'd be aware, the towns are about 6,000 to maybe 7,500. Most of the people live in very rural areas, so that they need a taxi. They pay extra money for a taxi to get them from A to B because there is no public transport. This plan was announced, you've mentioned it here, the Connected Ireland Rural Mobility Plan. When is it going to be phased out? When are these new routes that we've spoken about? Considering that we've already, Bus Éireann have reduced routes during the COVID lockdown, the pandemic. Bus Éireann reduced, for example, the X20 going from Galway to Roscommon, that was taken away because they said, competition from private bus services, which is grand, right, there you go. But where are these other new bus services that are now supposed to be coming? Like potentially there was one coming from Castlereagh, Mount Bellew, through Caltra to Ballinasloe that would have brought people to the hospital, Portiuncula Hospital. Never mind students who'd be travelling maybe to Thus or to Thus and Athlone, or potentially just coming in to do shopping, which is what we want to see. We want to see our smaller towns and villages being vital. So I think the Connected Ireland Rural Mobility Plan, if you can comment maybe in the phase in there. Finally, I think the last point that I just wanted to mention, and of course it's gone straight out of my head, but it'll probably come back, but you won't let me in later. But I suppose the last point I wanted to mention was just around I think it was around the transport as well, and I've forgotten it. I'll come back to it later. Thank you so much, Minister, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Senator.